Greetings, parish, orphans, and retrogrades. Welcome to another episode of the show. I'm back today with Brennan and Audra Nakane, and we're doing part 2 of the show, the as promised follow-up with the demonstrations today. What's up, Brennan and Audra? How are you guys?
Really good. We're doing really good. I think it was the good, the bad, and the ugly as far as for reading some of the comments. Some of the comments made us cry. Actually, some of the submissions that we got on our website were really touching.
Really touching. Yeah. I mean, overwhelmingly beautiful, the things that people were sharing and what they were hoping for, what they feel like this will help them accomplish. And we're just very blessed that you reached out and shared in that way. Yeah. So for any of the questions and concerns that people have, we are going to be making another video going through things like why it's so important to Catholicism, why doctors of the church have been using personality theory for the last 2,000 years. Right. And that's something we'll have on our website available to everyone.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. The main question that most people have when they're confronted with new good science, Mendelian genetics, Catholic priest, Big Bang Theory, Catholic priest, discoverer, quantum mechanics, Catholic ontologists and metaphysicians can make the most hay out of quantum theory in the early part of the 20th century because of the Thomistic teaching on act and potency. The main question that people have initially is methodology. What's your methodology? Today, we will be showing, look, win, lose, or draw, whether this is right, wrong, whatever, a tight methodology is the disposition. A tight methodology disposes. Here's how I'm getting my answers, and they're either right or wrong. Good science tends to point to right answers, and they tend to be both accurate and precise, meaning predictable, repeatable. So that's what we're going to go through today. And Catholics have a big role in late 19th, early 20th century science. We kind of have the first word on it because all of the important discoveries can only be made sense of from a Catholic point of view. This is new. It's new science. And so you're showing today, that by virtue of the videos you guys have put together, your methodology.
And just to give a quick recap about what the discovery is, just as the body emits emotions, the body also, we discovered, emits what it's motivated by, and it's expressed from moment to moment. And this is built off of a discovery that was made roughly 50 years ago that says where the eyes move. It says brain processing. So upper sections are visual. This is auditory, feeling, and thinking. And we found that these go in pairs, and this will show motivation. So the two most obvious to show would be wealth, double visual, the head will kick up, and approval, feeling and thinking, the head will actually kick down. So this is one of those things when someone's shy, when someone feels guilty, when somebody is confused about something, their head will go down. But yeah,
I told you in law school, I was talking to these two, actually taking the bar exam, one of the most nerve-wracking 3 days of my life. I was talking to two guys, Pat and Jerry, and we were just keeping loose. We were rattling off NBA stats because the bar is so exhausting. You have so much logged up here. You have to be loose, but you can't just go to sleep. You can't be totally relaxed going into it. So me and Pat and Jerry were rattling off NBA stats. Another thing this dude Pat was doing is like a genius. He was drawing the entire United States flag, all 50 states, in 90 seconds or under. It was a trade. Super smart Persian kid. Another thing we were doing, we just started talking about random facts go. I became friends with these guys just because I was sitting next to them. And I forget if it was Pat or Jerry. It was like, have you ever noticed when you see someone on a bike and you both pass and you don't know each other, you dip down. When you do know each other and you dip up. And I'm like, I never thought of that. But we were keeping loose with that. And I told you that, and you said this all conforms precisely to what you're saying about wealth versus uncertainty when you don't know someone or something like that. It's just science. At the end of the day, it's an inchoate science, but it's science all the same.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing that people are not used to. Why this discovery is so groundbreaking is because people are used to correlations, statistical correlations when it comes to people. They're not used to like laws of physics with people. So for instance, if you have force of impact, you can repeat that over and over and over again. With people, you have tendencies of what people do, like priming somebody, counting money, and seeing if they're nice or not would be an example of priming. In this case, this is 100% of the time. And because of that, people can say, well, what's the margin of error? Well, part of the margin of error is somebody can fake an emotion. Somebody can fake a motivation. And so what you have to do, just like if you're playing poker or any other situation as far as a business read, is you have to read the context of everything else. You're baselining the person using the words. If the head leans are going one way and the eyes are going another way, I might be looking at the feet, seeing what that's happening, looking at facial expressions. So what you're doing is you're making a composite of these different multi-pronged approach. But it is 100% of the time. This is not something that is just a correlation that sometimes people do and sometimes people won't. The second thing is it's symbiotic. Like somebody had put a comment about what happens when someone texts. And it's true, when we have a texting generation, their head is going to be going down to approval, which will most likely many times put them in shutdown approval, which means like they're shut off to the world. It's one of the reasons why so many pedestrians get injured when they're texting and walking, because they're literally shutting down to everything else. That would be a shutdown approval. Other times people feel more love when they get text than even from talking to somebody. I know Audra is like that in many ways.
I love my text.
If we're having a heated debate or argument, then maybe text would work better because it would actually put us both in a more of an approval state.
And before we go through this, I mean, acting 101, Stanislavski, you're talking about the internal affecting the external affects the internal. So even if someone fakes something like, oh, I'm going to trick them, I'm going to do something different from what I'd normally do, it will actually put them into that state in a couple minutes anyhow. And they can't control that. That's just something that the body is designed to match the internal and external states.
Yeah, and lawyers that know about the initial discovery that was made 50 years ago about the eyes moving and brain processing, they would actually tap their pencils for a witness, depending on if they wanted them to feel or think. They would purposely tap. So then the witness would look down to that section and it would bring them to that state. The negotiator, he would use things like, do you watch Westerns to get people out of a different place? There's different ways to pattern interrupt. But in general, a lot of times people think, oh, this is too simplistic. And we show, well, yeah, if you implemented it that way, it would be too simplistic. But with all the composite of things, it's very hard for people to maintain any degree of deception. And that's the reason why it's so powerful. But more important than seeing deception is to see what somebody's motivated by, so that you're on the same page.
Yeah, I think what people are, let's get into it. I think what's most complex about the one creature in existence is clearly free will. So what's most complex for people understanding a science that is not behavioralistic, like we were talking about Jung, who says basically the resurrection is as important a myth as any archetype you might draw out of Pinocchio or Snow White. That just writes off, truth as such. Whereas what you guys are showing is there is an expression, a physical expression of the teleology of the human body. Right. There's a teleology that is expressed and readable. It is not deterministic, though. This is what I was could have been more cautious in the first video to say, like, it's not a science of reading. It's a science of reading a kind of language, the language of the body, which expresses the teleology, the way God made us. This is why it is, for better or for worse, it is Catholic science. At the worst, it's whatever science is at its worst, inaccurate, but it reflects, from all my training in Thomism, it reflects the natural law, the teleology of the body. That's not to say that you can control people, or that like Jung and some of the behavioral psychologists, that you can treat the human being like an animal, like a lion, that can be conditioned in deterministic ways that produce outcome determinative results. That's not what this is. It's a reading. It's a way to use a metric to take a reading of human beings and to be more effective with nonverbal language. And it's an important science because, of course, you can do it to people that you're watching on TV. You can do it to your kids. You can do it to each other. And you guys today, right now, are going to teach people the method. I mean, show that the methodology actually works by virtue of these videos, which I'm really excited to do.
Right. Absolutely. And building upon that, right before we go into the videos, there's one other thing that's important as far as for people of faith is to see how when one's faith, like obviously us being Catholic, us believing that it perfectly maps to Catholicism better than any religion out there. The reason why is because there's certain things from our metaphysics that we care about. We care about the Ten Commandments. We care about the body-soul composite. We care about truth and beauty and goodness. And so the question is if we are to truly be Catholic, we would explore those areas. Well, the question is what if we were to say that our sensory blocks and our motivants perfectly map to all of those virtues and vices and Ten Commandments and sacraments? Then what you would have is a catechism in a box. Somebody says, I don't care about your auditory. Say, okay, do you care about Aquinas's will of choosing the good? Because if you don't care about that, now we have trouble, because now you don't even care about a Catholic faith or doctrine. And if you do care about that, then once you learn the rules of Aquinas, you literally need to learn nothing else when it comes to how we implement auditory. If you know the rules of intellect from Aquinas, you need to learn nothing else from what we say as far as for thinking, because it's a one-to-one match. So that's the exciting thing. We'll go through that later on, but I just really wanted to make sure that people understood this, that it wasn't kind of wrapping Catholicism over a generic thing.
It's intertwined, completely intertwined.
It's intertwined. Yes, absolutely.
Which people who aren't Catholic don't necessarily like. But that's just the truth of it.
Right. And we've spent 12 years overall from a science standpoint, 7 years theologically on top of that to vet this out. So we take our Catholicism and our science very seriously, and hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate that today.
Awesome. Let's go for it.
Okay, so this is George Clooney, and the first thing we're going to see is his head is level, and level represents the respect motivant. And the reason why is because the visual is up, the auditory is across, and they're on both sides, so therefore it will level out the head. And we're just going to watch through how he talks. Okay, so we're going to start out with George Clooney.
The city that would be the most...
George is a respect primary. And one of the ways you can see that is his head is staying level. And
you'll see this in every interview. So most of the time, although he's going to shift every now and then, like every human does, the vast majority of the time, his head's going to remain level. His eyes are going to be up or to the side. And then every now and then he'll dip down to approval, which is the opposite side of the continuum.
Right.
So respect going to approval. But you're going to see a lot of respect going on here, especially in the verbiage and the way he's talking about himself, too.
And that's one of the beauties is, again, you guys can find any video of George Clooney throughout his life. And this is going to be a constant pattern, just to make sure that we're not cherry picking. The reason why the head is level is because the visual and auditory processing, if you picture like 4 strings holding there, it's the only motivant that will keep a head completely level like this.
Mm-hmm.
Most fun to live if you weren't well-known would be New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think...
Now, when he starts saying that, his left shoulder goes up, his head's kicking over, he's starting to go to approval. The interviewer gave a little bit of a which didn't seem like she was too big of a fan of the New York. Maybe she was. Maybe that's just the way she sounds. But it actually kicked him over to the state of approval.
It's the greatest city in the world. And it's not the greatest city when you're well-known. But
he's trying to kind of defend his choice at that point.
New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think it's the greatest city in the world. And it's not the greatest city when you're well-known, because it never lets up.
Mm-hmm.
There's no let up. The minute you walk out the door, it's, 4 million people in your...
So you see head smiling more, head's leaning over to the left. So that's his respect flipping over to approval. And then he's going to look to try to get composure again back to respect.
Yeah,
but,
I saw that.
But just to walk between the museums and the park and the amount...
And again, see how much, if we were to draw a line level where his eyes are, see how few times his eyes ever go below that level.
It's going to be up, or it's going to tend to be to the side. Yeah. Every now and then it'll sweep down.
Of culture and the different culture that comes at you at once, right there would be the spot. I think the one that always stuck with me was my father would always insist that we
now had eyes gone down to the right. That's feeling.
He's talking about his dad. So more emotional, going to approval again.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah,
that we have to look out for other people. You know, it was always a big part of it. What
that phrase comes out again.
Is associated.
You have a responsibility. Yeah. We were pretty broke when I was young. My mom made all my clothes for me and things.
Oh, I never knew that.
But
and then even the mouth widening is also showing more approval. It can be fearful, it can be joy, but when the mouth widens. And these are all mappings we can explain, but we'll take lots of time.
Yeah, we're going to do it really quick right now. This is not a training.
Yep.
We didn't really know it. You know, we were never told that we were. And
left shoulder went up again. And again, sometimes if people look at deception detection, they'll take these cues as lying, but this is one of the challenges of making oversimplifications. It doesn't mean that he's lying in the situation. It means that he's feeling something. Mm-hmm. And in the context of where maybe somebody shouldn't be feeling something or getting excessively nervous at that point, it might indicate lying.
Could mean
but
lying,
that's more of a probability thing.
Never felt that we were. And we always felt sort of very wealthy in love and kindness. And I think our parents always felt that should be shared with other people.
And every time you see him making that side movement with the auditory, he's thinking about a rule.
Right.
So in his family, the rules were you share, you be loving, kind. So you just see a lot of respect and approval shifting back and forth.
Very wealthy in
and he's about to say feel again, and he looks down and to his right.
Love and kindness, and I think our parents always felt that should be shared with other.
And there was very subtle, but
people. Well, it was 6 hours before I told Matt, because we thought we were trying, and we thought that.
So we were trying visual want at that point.
We thought we were trying, and we thought that she might be pregnant. We went to the doc.
That's a balance thing. We'll go through that when we go through Brad Pitt, but feeling an auditory in that lower right, he's balancing self out.
And we did that thing, and he goes, yeah, there's the baby. And he goes, and there's the other one. And I was like, the other one?
Now his head's going balancing again, and this time the shock of having twins.
What are you talking about? And so I was kind of in shock, and I went to work that day, and I was sitting with Matt, and I go, going to have twins. He's like, shut up. Don't tell anybody. And I was like, it just happened. I don't know. So it happened pretty quick.
So just to sum up, George Clooney is respect primary. That means he's going to be really good at storytelling, confident. These are things that he's known for, charming, being good with an audience. He'll flip to approval and get a little bit sensitive and emotional.
And that's when he's not confident. And that's one of the reasons why the whole introversion extroversion thing doesn't hold water, because every time he's flipping over to approval, that would be classically thought of as introversion, the way that most people use it.
Yeah, you guys showed me a video of Clooney. I think that's one of the ones you put his head on ×3 fast forward, or ×5 or something. And it's, people might not understand because they haven't studied hundreds of hours of thousands of hours of video people talking the way you have, but many people that when you fast forward, their head's going all the up and down like a bobblehead. George Clooney is perfectly straight, and respect primaries are perfectly straight. You were saying this, I think, about Taylor Marshall. You fast forward his videos, it's just perfectly straight, right?
Exactly. Yeah, as Father Mike Schmitz is another one, famous you'll be able to see, in the Catholic world. So now we're going to move on to Matt Damon. And his primary is approval.
So the opposite end of the continuum.
And Audrey knows a little something about approval. So
I do.
She's a approval primary.
No.
Yep.
When you go back to your normal life, it's pretty harmless.
Do you spend a lot of time figuring out what to wear?
No.
So again, he's starting off with he's a little more hesitant, right? He's not coming across quite as confident. He's got a left head lean, which always indicates some form of thinking, either revolution or approval that's happening.
Just asking, is he talking to, it says the Great Wall, is he talking only to a wall that's asking him questions? That's what it looks like from my perspective.
Yeah.
If there's an interviewer, she's cut off.
Yeah. We had to we had to cut her off because of the Skype call. We had to
Yeah,
share.
Yeah,
how-
you should have been like, no, he's just talking to the Great
Yeah,
Wall,
yeah.
which is
No,
Again,
but
this
you know,
movement,
Okay.
going down, this is all approval. It's
no.
it's awkward. It's
Yeah, so
nervous.
he's trying to hold it together, and then as soon as she asked him that question, the dam breaks, and then what you see is, let's go real quick here, is his eyes thinking, moves down over to feeling. Happened very quick.
that when people are in approval, their
No.
eyes will shift back and forth between the feeling and the thinking.
So see right there, feeling, thinking, goes back to feeling. Super subtle. But again, my kids can all read this in profile, like they're reading the back of their hand.
And again,
so.
if you go through lots of video of Matt Damon, you watch interview after interview, you're going to see this pattern and the type of characters he tends to play, which are going to be more sensitive or awkward or nerdy, or even when he plays a strong character like Jason Bourne, it's going to be somebody that's more nuanced than a James Bond type.
Right.
You know, it's
And again, that phrase is one of the classic markers. So people oftentimes ask, well, what happens if I can't see the person? If I'm talking on the phone, if you see phrases like, you definitely know that
They're in an approval
In
state
approval.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really sticks when I use, because I actually know when I'm nervous. And then when we teach audiences, then when they're profiling us, then by the end of it, they'll actually call out stuff. And so
It's true. It's like the
the
Wizard of
tables
Oz.
turn. Yeah.
The,
At first,
the veil
we're
is gone and everybody can
yeah, it's true.
profile what
It's
we're-
true. And
what we're
just,
going through personally.
Yep. We're just the people behind.
Yeah.
So again, there it
these
is.
incredible designers go show.
And now in this situation,
these
when
incredible.
he said incredible, in this case, he also went to
It's-
approval, but this was a positive approval. So it's not just simply a negative approval.
No, but it's
See, eyes just swept, heads down, eyes sweeping down.
Positive approval meaning he likes it. He
Mhm.
he gives it thumbs up. Yeah. Okay.
designers go would you please wear this suit? And I go, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, yes.
See,
would love-
again, head went down.
Yeah.
Love to. Beautiful. Yeah.
And this would be a good note, like if we're training speakers that have trouble connecting to the audience, we'll have them actually practice looking down.
Because sometimes connection and to feel like somebody cares.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So just, we literally tell them pause and look at your feet before you're going to say something that should convey emotion.
So
And conversely, if there's people that are excessively nervous, we do the exact opposite. We tell them, don't look below to your feet. Only look level or up.
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, this is easy.
Okay, so now his head's leaning over to the right. He's in balance right now. So he's trying to balance out the situation. There's a lot of emotion that he's had in this interview, trying to keep his cool.
Really the best final day of film in the history of film.
But now he starts showing the emotion. You see the head kicking back. That's the thing that we saw as far as with the Matt Fradd interview when he got a little bit spooked by things. Head will kick back, and then it's going to tilt over to the left.
I'm like, it was so
Now he's thinking.
Unbelievably beautiful. And then my kids and I took a boat up towards the North Pole, like into the and
You see, and all the hesitation there. So anytime you hear a lot of speech tics, more likely than not, there's a lot of approval going on.
Can there be speech tics that people are formulating slowly, and that's the etiology of it?
Well, everyone can be in a state of approval no matter what your profile is.
Sure.
And that's important to see someone over time, because anyone can be in a state where they feel hesitant or nervous or concerned, and will go to that state of approval.
That's actually Audra's gift.
Sorry. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just wondering, how do you distinguish between a speech tick where the person's just a bad formulator and a speech tick that indicates going to a state of approval? Sorry to cut you off, Brendan.
No, perfect. No, that's a great question. Actually, you're going to see the way that they're doing it. So it's a performance issue. If they're saying and so, that's all approval. But if someone's more of a statistical thinker, that's a lot more of a revolution trait. Or if somebody does it in a different state, you're reading where they're coming from when they're having a tick. For example.
And that's how the combinations happen. Like, for instance, a revolution person can still get nervous, but it's very clearly a revolution primary person versus an approval primary person getting nervous. So that's the complexity of these different colors.
Sure.
And then more of an advanced training of figuring out, okay, what is the verbiage they're using? What is the demeanor that they have at the time?
Right, right. And if somebody tries to fake it and says like, oh, I know. But if they're like, I know, you can tell right now that's shutdown approval. And if someone's like, I know, it's just acting. So it is a bit of a poker tell that you're taking all elements together. Yeah. And then your con artists will actually purposely go
these.
Well, yeah, because what they can do is they can go like an actor to former times where they actually felt bad. Like, let's just say they had a parent die. They can picture that. They can
go into that state.
Yeah, truly represent approval, and then people will think that they're sincere.
Right.
So there is a gamemanship to this. It's not that you just simply see this and go hook, line, and sinker for every action you see.
Right.
So again, we're going to see right here, he's in balance.
And saw some polar bears and stuff.
Polar bears. He likes polar bears. He's going to go back to approval.
He did, yeah. Oh, mom and her cub.
Yeah, he's happy about that.
Through the binoculars and went along.
He's trying to hide it, but now his head's got to kick back over there.
You know, it was just, and that was a really great, obviously, experience.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why somebody will kick back there is just because that is what their preference is toward. So, for instance, even when we share Nakane Caps with different people, certain people are totally fine with abstract scientific stuff. We can go 100 miles an hour. Other people, it's like very uncomfortable for them. So they really have to work at that.
They really need the experiential aspect.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we like to really make sure whatever demographic we're talking to, like if I'm teaching it to my kids or teaching it to somebody that doesn't tend to care as much about psych, I'll explain it like there's jocks, there's nerds, think about high school in very simple layman's terms. And then once they understand, then they can begin to understand it. So we're throwing it more as a proof right now, but when we actually give the information out, we are very attuned to audience.
Right.
So I got a new safety guy. I was like, see, that's where we're different. I'd listen to the first safety guy. You get a safety guy who agrees with you, so you can do that.
Okay, so that's respect. So you see, he's in respect right now, but you can see he doesn't have that respect confidence.
But his head is still level.
Clooney, but his head's still level.
He's being more firm.
But he's giving his rule right now, which is the respect.
But like, no, that's fearless. I'm not like that.
Yeah, again, I'm not like that. I'm not fearless like Tom Cruise. Okay. Stop that.
Sure.
So again, Matt Damon, approval primary. We see him flipping to respect. Again, in that clip, we see him doing some other things as well because that's human nature. But go back, watch interviews with him in other situations. Know the general demeanor of Matt Damon. That is a classic approval person.
Yeah, I know it better. I know Matt Damon's norms more. I guess I've just seen more interviews than I have with Clooney. So that's very typical for him. I'm not like a Matt Damon fan. I have a good mental image of how he typically is in interviews. I guess I must have seen more. He's always in that mode. He always has that particular quirk, the weird equipoise that you're describing. So I know that's consistent. You say go back and watch Clooney. I would have to, though. You showed, like I said, you showed me a couple clips where he was super level. Damon's totally different, but his manner of speaking and the way his head moves down so frequently that was well known to me. That was very interesting, convincing, winsome, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's going to be the great
more
thing.
Emotional.
Yeah, for people,
he's just going to be more emotional. Yeah, it's one of his things.
For people who are curious to say, I'm interested, but then the great thing is YouTube is a great place to get the proof. Right. Watch him interviews with other people in various different contexts. Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, he's going to look down more than the co-star that he's being interviewed with.
That goes for all these guys. I mean, like, go watch clips, and that's why I think it's useful for you guys as we run through each of these six motivants and the 6 representatives. Yeah. For people to just take a couple notes for you from what you say at the end of each thinker, people out there listening, take a couple big notes, so big tells from Clooney, from Matt Damon. You said Brad Pitt's coming up next, and then just take some notes and go watch some YouTube video if that's convincing for people, because it was for me. I mean, I haven't studied this stuff. I'm from a science family. Me and Dave are the only ones in my family that aren't studied in the sciences. And my brother's a PhD from Colorado School of Mines.
Yeah.
My dad's a scientist. I know these are the norms, and it's like at the very most casual, informal level, just write down some major tells, 2 or 3 major tells from each thing that you guys say to look for, and people go check out interviews with these 6 guys on YouTube.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Your spouse, your kids, you name it, and that's when you'll begin to pick up on things, like when our daughter, I think she was turning like 13, and she had a typical thing what she liked to do for her birthday, and said, hey, you want to go to a movie, get pizza and stuff? And she's like, that sounds great. And we read the tells, go, oh no, she's a teenager now. So instead we went to the LA Chinese garment district and picked up a bunch of clothes.
Yeah.
Right. She was just being nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you could tell. You can't fool these guys.
Okay, so next we're gonna go into analysis of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, he's living an interesting life.
One of the first things you're going to see right off the bat. So we had George Clooney, respect primary, head's going to be level. You have Matt Damon, approval, head's either going to be in the downward corners or to the left. Brad Pitt, his head's going to be leaning over to the right primarily, but it will do the bobblehead movement.
And again, this doesn't mean someone's head is stuck in a position. Obviously, everyone has the ability to do a number of things, but this is going to be the space that they're most comfortable going back to.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, like the electron affinity where the head is the most often, or whatever. Is that it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, if you have a painting that primarily has a few different colors to it, those are going to be the central colors, but clearly it'll have tons
multiple
of different
colors.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so and even we see right there, even if we just go back to that one little section, there's such a good job of
that's
demonstrating.
Like
you're going to see him thinking, eye to the left, and then feeling eye to the right. Right there. Goes over there, left, right. He just keeps sweeping there. So we know currently right now he's in the state of approval, and that in fact is what his secondary is.
Yeah, we aren't going through the secondaries, but you're going to see some of that secondary slipping out here.
Then auditory roll right there, head levels up, goes back.
Wait, his primary is what?
Oh, is balance. Is balance. So balance
right.
is primary, and it's going to be shown by his eyes going down and to the right, which is feeling, and across, which is auditory. And if you take down to the right and across, it's going to put him right around that maybe 7, 8 o'clock time, if there was a clock on his face. That'd be kind of an interesting picture, but yeah, it's an easy way to picture it. In between that 7 and 8 time, his eyes are going to keep darting in those areas.
And you want to see the overall demeanor too.
Yeah.
There's going to be a contrarianness. There's going to be kind of a joking, I'm not taking myself too seriously thing. Those are all balance traits.
Yeah. So you'll see throughout this interview, when the interviewer is trying to get him to talk about his career and talk about where he is right now and take things seriously, he's going to constantly be taking more playful, indirect, ambiguous jokes.
Innocent, the question.
Everything.
All right.
Are you shy or are you just private?
Everything.
Not answering the question.
Right. Head's like buried down in that feeling place. And because he's balanced primary, which is a feeling-based motivant, and his secondary is also approval, which is a feeling-based motivant. A lot of times he's going to bury his head over down and to the right.
Mm. Does it worry you that with acting comes interviews and?
No, it doesn't worry me. I understand this.
Now he's getting a little more to the respect place.
Well, and he's also being contrarian. No, it doesn't worry me.
Yeah, but he kind of disapproved of that. When his eyes swept to those lower corners, that was a disapproving.
No, it doesn't worry me. I understand it's
See, he disapproved right there. Very quick.
part of it. No, it doesn't worry me. I understand it's
So anybody, again, we've had some therapists write to us.
Quite
saying
a
that
few, actually.
Yeah. that would
Social
like to-
workers, psychologists.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so this would be a classic example that we really want to pick up on this very, very quick movement
part of it.
of his
No, it
eyes.
doesn't worry me. I understand.
See, it
Gotcha.
swept the corners. That was approval. So he disapproved of that question. Now he's balancing out to try to figure out how to respond. And then his head is going to go level in respect for communication.
It's part of it.
Lips top. We'll teach you more about that later. Now, next, I think he's going to be asked how old he is. And you'll see a classic balance response.
How old are you?
Me, 38.
Are you looking good?
14. I don't know.
What
38, 22, 14, who knows? Again, he leads on the right, he's joking.
Kind of exciting, though. I mean, of all the shows you could be involved with, at least you're involved with something that has the potential of being.
Okay, so now just one thing to note, even though he's balance primary, approval secondary, his eyes quickly went to the respect motivant when she's asking him, I believe, about his career.
With something that has the potential, though. I mean, of all the shows you could be involved with, at least you're involved with something.
Okay, so went over to the other side, auditory and visual. He's picturing, but the combination between the two is not just visual and auditory. We have to combine the two to then make the motivant of respect.
So there's some type of rule that he feels most likely that she's breaking. Maybe he feels like she's going too far in her questions. But these are little things that you pick up on really quickly, that especially from a situation like a therapist is going to be working with a person, you can pick up on what is happening and be able to adjust the way you're relating to them accordingly.
Right. And what we would call his secondary, that it doesn't tend to flip over as much, we call it conflicted, because in this situation, he actually likes respect at the same time as he doesn't want to seem like he's full of himself. So putting a position in it's almost like a temptation, like she's offering a temptation for him, and he both likes it and he resents it.
Something that has the potential you're involved with. I mean, of all the shows you could be involved with, at least you're involved with something that has the potential of being.
Lots of balance,
And now he just
auditory
bounced out.
feeling,
He
auditory
went to
feeling.
respect really quick, darted back to balance.
Yeah, the potential's definitely there.
So now he's excited about it.
See if we pull it off.
Victory flash eyebrows. We'll teach that more in our stuff.
What are your goals? Is it?
I can't help it. I'm Revolution Primary.
We teach a lot of things.
We're going to teach about ourselves too. So we have the same
our family.
strengths and limitations of
Yep.
everybody. So
An actor, what?
let her approval loves me.
You must sit back and go, gee, I'd really like to be involved in this type of thing, or
Yeah, I have big goals.
can you say what they are?
I
Or?
wouldn't really prefer to voice them right now. I'd rather do them.
So he doesn't prefer to voice them. That's communication. That's respect. That's the
So I
conflicted that
don't
keeps.
prefer to voice them when he goes to balance
Exactly.
and down to approval.
Yeah.
How old
And one of
is
the things
he
you can-
here? Just out of curiosity.
I think
He says-
26.
Yeah.
Oh, he seems
Yeah.
really young. I mean, like maturity level, he seems really young. He seems almost like a 18-year-old actor or something that was plucked from
Oh, sure.
obscure. Yeah, the way. Yeah, it's strange. I've never seen him act this way in an interview. It's interesting.
Well, yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, is that you can look at him at this age and then look at him in older age, as you're just going to see a different version of balance. So
Right.
you're going to see those same qualities, the same contrarianness or avoiding questions or any of those things, but it'll just be a different maturity level of it. And that's
Right.
the interesting thing about personality, is sometimes people say, well, my personality is so different than it was when I was 26. And we would say, well, no, the structure is still the same, but the way you approach that structure hopefully has changed and matured.
Right.
So
Right. It'd be like if you just saw the body of a car in the beginning of an assembly factory versus when it's all done. So there's going to be a lot. Or versus taking that car off the lot versus driving 100,000 miles on it. You're
Right.
going to have difference on it. And that's the reason why we have to have that classic Greek debate between things always changing and things always being constant. And then that matrix line that takes the two, says some things change, some things remain the same. This is the classic, in a nutshell, concept of Nakane Caps, that you have to take both structure, because some people want to go the opposite way. Like there's a book called The Cult of Personality by Ann Paul Murphy. And it's a great book debunking many personality systems, But at the end of it, she basically advocates just listening to a person's entire life story. And she thinks that that would be the solution to understanding personality.
Sort of a scarcity of time.
Yeah, exactly. A scarcity of time. And even a snowflake, even the uniqueness of a snowflake still can be categorized in one of 36 or so different types. So the whole idea about science is not simply about, you have to find some type of classification that, yes, there'll be exceptions and whatnot, but like you oftentimes say, as far as the rules, you don't focus on making rules for the exceptions. You focus on rules to be as close to truth as possible, and you deal with the exceptions that come. Yep.
What's some of your background? Yeah. What's some of your background for people who don't, might be intrigued in what you've been up to and so on?
Background, as in work?
Yeah, or whatever, whether you were...
This stuff. I'm not being real helpful.
No, come on, talk to me.
Man.
He did a very nervous sign right there. Very nervous sign. Yeah, he's contrary, but his contrarianness of his balance primary is actually trying to protect his approval secondary. And now this is
because he's nervous, but he doesn't want to come across as nervous, most likely. So he's really trying to control.
It's really funny. I mean, just look at that breath that he's taking right now. He is like, yeah, it's like the teacher catching you not doing your homework. Yeah. So, and his head leaning over to the left. That's approval. Well, oftentimes when the head leans one way, but the eye darts the other way, you're actually trying to control an emotion even more than normal. Like a lot of times when guys are talking about sensitive subjects and they don't want to cry, their head will be leaning one way, their eyes will be the other.
He's going through a much more advanced
course
what?
Than for all you revolution people out there, you will love this.
When we first start teaching the program, it's very basic. Where does someone's head tend to lean? Where do their eyes tend to go?
It's so cool, guys.
And it's very
go down that rabbit hole with us. It is awesome.
It's very quick to learn. He's more advanced than what we would normally do. Yes. Don't get scared off.
But our kids can profile. Our 6-year-old can profile. Yeah. She's 6 now? Yeah. I think so they all change ages.
We have 6 children, and he's constantly sort of mixing them up every now and then,
Yeah, I'll always call the kids the previous kid's name.
All right, moving forward.
Because I want to give them a taste of what we're actually like.
Okay.
Okay, his approval.
Stuff.
There's a quick revolution there. His balance will flip the revolution.
Yep, and now he's playing it off.
This and that, right? This is balance and revolution going back and forth.
Stuff covers.
So how would you describe the show to someone who's new? Sort of the what is it about? What's happening? And
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Cool. Good answer, bro.
Yeah, we're putting him on the circuit.
I'm sure people have asked you, what are you working on? Or
I don't know. I'm not sure.
No. Well, say, where do you think it's going? Give me a 30-second clip on.
And again, here's the funny thing is, one that from the previous 2 videos, we showed that I don't know is an indicator of approval. But in this case, he's going to a defiant disapproval. So now you guys can see when someone's being like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, again, if a therapist or counselor was talking to somebody, they'd be like, hey, how are things going? I don't know.
And it has the contrarianness again. I'm not going to answer your question. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Lean to the right. I don't know.
Yep. So in that case, when somebody's in approval like this, you cannot take what they're saying for face value. Mm-hmm. If they say, oh, everything's fine.
You may just have to change your approach more than anything.
Exactly.
Yep. Having seen Brad Pitt interview here, I don't think this is all interesting stuff. This is a different iteration of balance than you guys have ever shown me. But I don't think anyone would take what he's saying at face value anyway. You're not in danger. This is like the worst interview I've ever seen. It's hilarious.
It's one of the reasons we wanted to share it. Is because from a therapist standpoint, they're going to see more of these kinds of situations where people are going to deflect.
Yep.
They don't want to share what's going on in their life. And you have to learn how to get past that escapism.
Right.
And find a way to truly connect with someone. So it's a very interesting interview for a celebrity. You don't see that as commonly.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, one of the things we're going to do, one of the YouTube channels that we're starting is called the Nakane Caps Family. And we actually show how we take this information to have a better marriage and better family and parent-child relationship. But our first daughter is balance approval.
Just
so
like
we'll show,
Pitt.
we'll show videos when we'll ask her questions. She'll do the exact same things, and we'll show it go across time from when she was 5 years old to when
and she's fine with it.
15 years old. Yeah, absolutely. But
she's 19 now, and she's a pure joy.
Yeah.
And
she is
herself.
Oh, she's amazing. Yeah.
Sort of the difficulties of the past and having to get beyond that barrier.
Yeah, but she can talk through the arc change about what she's felt at different points in her time. And like, for instance, in this situation, oftentimes what she'll say is, I have so many thoughts at one time, I don't know how to pick. And so one of the rules that we gave her is literally pick the first thing that comes in your mind. Don't judge how it's going to look. Don't judge any things like that. So that's something that we can help for a patient standpoint that would have maybe a challenge like this, is to begin to start working on just trusting that whatever comes up in your mind is probably the majority of what should be said right there. So anyway, my revolution secondary or primary, as you guys will see, will give lots of detail, but hopefully it'll be interesting stuff. It'll be applicable to your life, and we'll go in greater depth with it later.
Where you think this, or where you hope it's going, or what it's about, because you have to figure your audience has never heard of this.
Oh, head kicked up. You guys probably know. Actually, no, you don't. Maybe from the previous video, we said that the head kicking up is wealth.
Where I hope for it to go, more on a personal level.
Now his head's leveling up a lot more because she's been pushing. Now she's pushing him over to respect.
For friends. Why do we get there? I don't know.
See, he's like, back off, lady. Like, I'm trying to do my thing. I'm a little bit nervous.
I told you this before. I don't want to talk about it. I'll say it really quickly.
Because as nervous and awkward as he is, and this is probably one of his first big interviews, she's pushing too much. And this would be a classic example of not being able to read the situation to understand what his primary and secondary is. Maybe she's used to a chatty Cathy, or is that the phrase? The chatty Cathy going around talking, and now she judges him by one base standard, and that one base standard is unacceptable. So therefore she's going to keep pushing. What she needed to do in the situation was to profile what his profile was, anticipate it, make him feel more comfortable. If he wants to play around, fine, then you play around with him to get the answer.
Yeah, instead it just looks like bulldozing, which is what this interview seems to be, is her bulldozing him and him giving almost an answer to a cop standing at his car door or something. It's funny.
Well, I know, really interestingly, yeah. In an interview I saw several years ago, I can't remember who the reporter was. A well-known reporter and journalist that was talking to him and sort of saying like, "Oh, you're so handsome. You're so handsome. This is so great. I can't believe I'm interviewing you. What do you think of all the women?" And he just, "Can we do the interview now? Like, I'm this is ridiculous. Can you see it? Like, she was not reading that was making him uncomfortable.
Right.
And that funny. He did not want to be in that situation. He was giving all these clues. She wasn't picking up on them. Yep. So he has a very similar demeanor later, much later, but you have to kind of see how it's evolved.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to debrief on Brad Pitt, we spent a lot of time on Brad Pitt, but that was an interesting interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's balanced primary. He will tend to flip to revolution, that balanced revolution continuum. He had the approval secondary, which we went through because there was a lot of approval that he was giving there. And he is going to tend to be contrarian. He's going to try and escape questions sometimes. He's going to have more of a joking demeanor. And with him, it's more of a subtle joking demeanor. He's going to, that revolution, he's going to be a little more protesting at times. So he's just going to get impatient. That revolution is going to be a little more impatient and protesting.
Right. The movie, I think, was it California, something like that, where he played a serial killer. That's when he is allowed to let his revolution come out more and play more on his weird side.
So does the contrarianism come from the balance, or the balance mixed with the approval, or
both? It would. It.
Yeah.
If it was,
it's a different version, basically. Yeah. So somebody that's going to be balanced respect will still have that contrarianism, but it'll come across in a different way than it would with him.
Yeah.
And we'll go through that once we start the training programs and we start going through how the secondary adds a flavor to the primary.
Yeah, because the difference is a balanced respect. If they're being contrarian, either one, they might do it and want to have credit for their wit, like, haha, I'm being balanced contrarian. And because, or secondly, they'll be contrarian because they think, no, this is what I think. So they'll try to establish the rule.
And the opinion will come across much stronger.
Whereas his is approval, is a indirect communication. It's going to be a lot more like, I don't like this, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to give you all these nonverbal cues, and please pick
until
up
I
on
explode.
them. Exactly.
Yeah.
Until I put down.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so next we're going to go to Casey Affleck, and he is the other flip of the bobblehead. And so his head is going to be primarily over to the left
in Revolution.
So
Revolution. Okay.
Everything's there for a reason, you know, and the action is very specific too. And so there's a scene where I'm watching.
And you're going to keep seeing. He says to the left. His
and
eyes
it
will
just
keep sweeping down to
describes.
the
He
left.
says he's holding his groceries, you know, in such a way, and as he's watching the fire. And I thought, I for whatever reason, I thought I couldn't understand that.
I couldn't understand that.
And he keeps saying reason,
right,
over and over, thoughts. So the biggest things is that even if you're not able to see what's happening with someone from a facial standpoint, if you're on the phone with someone, you can keep hearing what's the verbiage that they're using. And so in an interview like this, you're going to keep hearing things like make sense or reason or thoughts or understand.
Everything's for a reason. So you think about, and revolution is very big in the atheistic community. So that's why you'll have literally atheist groups like called Project Reason. It's something they very much pride. And it's one of the things that oftentimes believers will make the mistake when sharing their faith, that they won't respect that difference. And what they instead do, they'll go to tradition or authority and in that place, even Aquinas says that appealing to authority, unless it's scripture, is the lowest form.
Precisely.
Well, and really quick, so I was an atheist myself. I'm a revolution secondary, so I'm approval revolution. And what was really, really important to me in the process of becoming Catholic was, does this make sense? Does this seem like truth? Is this reasonable given these parameters? And so when people wouldn't address those questions to me, and actually many people would put their foot down and say, why can't you just believe it? Why can't you just have the faith? But for me, there was a process that needed to occur in getting across that bridge. And I just needed someone that was willing to kind of go through those questions. So it's, I mean, if I can become Catholic, anyone can become Catholic. I was very anti-Catholic.
And she ended up finding a Catholic, which at the time I was not practicing my faith.
Yeah.
And when I occasionally went to church, I was not practicing it well, but we'd already been exposed to all different forms of psychology, been exposed to, were well versed in academic and intellectual literature. We were exposed to self-help and any types of thing promised that was supposed to help us with our situation, and it wasn't helping us. And we hit that place to say, I said, you know what? I have this thing, Catholicism here. Maybe we should give it a try. And she said the last thing she would ever do is become Catholic. And then
God plays these jokes on me. Yeah, every time I say I'm not going to do something, he does it. So I'm just going to stop saying it.
Exactly. And so, but how this relates back is because I ended up being primarily the person that brought her back to Catholicism, because when the questions would come up and nobody else would have the answers and everybody would kind of
search for them together.
Yeah, we literally sit her in a car and talk, and she'd ask questions and we'd come up with it. Very, very, very important if you have revolution people in your life.
Yeah, and a lot of reverts will relate to that story. I think there's a caricature of reason that's played. It's actually illogic played out by a lot of the squirrely atheist types that makes for an overreaction and overcompensation on the part of religious people, typically kind of Puritan American types. It's being absorbed right now all too readily into Catholicism, a kind of Puritan Catholicism, which thinks it rejects reason on the basis of rejecting the illogic of Casey Affleck types. And it's what makes for purity spirals. And that's a big thing happening right now in Catholicism. And I talk about it a lot too. But
yeah. And on the one side, the rationalism, and the other side, the fideism, of those two things going to battle. And Father Mitch Pacwa makes a great point about this. He says, first, before you answer, try to understand their argument as well as possible. So let them put all their cards out on the table first. I think Ben Shapiro made a similar comment as far as in the debate where he said that President Trump in the first debate of the 2020 election probably cut off too many times and needed to allow Joe Biden to put out his entire premise first and then pick it out.
And let people laugh at it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So is Casey
Sure.
Casey's full on revolution, and he seems like, from the little I know, kind of a paradigm instant revolution guy.
Yes, absolutely. And some interviews like that he made with one that he played a
Veteran,
veteran that came back. He was in a lot more balance, but that because the subject matter was so much heavier that he wasn't.
So
yeah,
he'll flip. So if you see his interviews, depending on the interview and how comfortable he is or what the subject matter is, he'll do either more balance or more revolution. But clearly, in most of them, you're going to see a lot more revolution.
Yeah, and most likely approval secondary, which you'll see those eyes sweep back and forth
and be a little more quiet.
Yeah.
You know, and the action is very specific too. And so there's a scene where I'm watching my house burn down, and it just describes. He says he's holding his groceries, you know, in such a way, and as he's watching the fire. I thought,
and you know what? This is one thing. I think it's just
as he's watching the fire. I thought, I for whatever reason, I thought
I see that same left shoulder going up. If any fans of Lie to Me would see that and say, "Oh, he's lying." But again, this is just an indicator that we can go past making simple body language reads to say if someone's arms are together, it means that they're not buying what you're saying. Arms folded together for our system just means more thought-based. Hands out just means more auditory-based. So if you're going to balance and you're trying to pray in a meditative state, your hands are going to be out. If you're thinking about things like Rodin's The Thinker, eyes looking down to the left and arms in. So therefore, then you don't have to think these. Once people really understand the Nakane Caps, they'll understand that this is the least judging system that's out there. And when people say that they have no system, they're probably oftentimes the most judgmental, because in that situation, they're still having to categorize a person in one way or another. And like you said, they don't have a methodology to make sure that their internal bias is not playing a factor.
Couldn't understand that.
I couldn't understand that.
Yep.
Let's think about other parts of the scene first.
Let's think about other parts of the scene
first, and then maybe that'll fall into place.
Yeah.
And he was right. It did.
Yeah.
It was like
he was right. Revolution people love being right. I love being right. I just had to say that. I love being right.
I prove him wrong.
Yeah, and I'm victory secondary. So when someone tries to prove me wrong for something that I've spent 12 years just on the Nakane Caps and accessing movements have been over 2 decades, I love to then engage with that.
In this situation, he's admitting
the response to that tragedy that I was witnessing, you know.
So a response to that tragedy, again, going back to especially people that are working with people that are going through very difficult times in their life, heads leaning one way, eyes are going the other way.
The response to that tragedy.
Because he's trying to kind of control. If you're feeling and your head's going completely that way, it's often people will literally cry.
So a lot of times what you'll see is when people don't want to cry, they'll actually go to wealth because they know that'll be the least likely place for them. I mean, they don't know this other than it's a design that we have. You have a feeling that if I go up like this, I'm going to be able to control my pain. So see people kind of start tearing up and they'll go like this to gather themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a similar thing. You're looking to control your emotions in that situation.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and you can see in this place, it's like a constant read, like you're reading from one sentence to another sentence of like another challenge that revolution people have is oftentimes they'll be more thought-based, not in terms of fact-based. So that awesome author from Crime and Punishment and
Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody could please just say that. But again, as you're reading from sentence to sentence, the context and the meaning, the overall story is going to keep changing. So we're not going to give a simple test to say this is what this person is. We're asking you to literally read the story of their life. Way more entertaining. You don't know what's going to happen in the next chapter. You don't know what's going to happen in the next page. So this is what we're encouraging people to do.
Was
so
Dostoevsky, was he a revolution? I mean, I know he was a revolutionary. He was part of the Petrashevsky circle. Was he actually revolution primary, though?
That's a great question. I don't think we've gone through and profiled, but it's a really great question. A lot of people from movements or time periods like that, there was a lot of balance and revolution, obviously. And they tend to delve very deep into concepts. So that's a good guess, and that's something we would definitely go back and look at.
Yeah, and we'd say actually, I believe the Russian culture, I think, has a lot of revolution to it.
It does.
Russian, German, Jewish, all three very much have lots of revolution.
I was witnessing, it could have been done in a bunch of different ways, but
now you hear the keep coming out.
Yeah.
Now approval.
He's showing his approval secondary. Yeah.
If he is sort of closes down on himself and he just tries to hold on to the very one thing that he can hold on to, it made the rest of the movie make sense.
Makes sense. He's looking at the left.
So the last one clip he ended with understand. This one makes sense.
Yep.
It seemed like the movie suddenly became full of these ideas about adoption and sort of what it means to adopt people, and that this kid, the young boy, did have a family out there and he just couldn't find them. And you think, like, had somebody said, I'm going to help this boy find his home instead of I'm going to take him into my home.
So again, you just keep hearing those same words, same verbiage.
Yeah. And when we deliver this system, just to show you kind of how Audra and I work as partners, she's going to be a lot more of the general overall audience. Like if we had one person to do an interview, we'd put her on there, not me. What I am playing for is the skeptic critics that might try to say, you guys just, drank the Kool-Aid, you got sucked into this. My revolution is going to address those people. So once they see my section, they go, that's a good point. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because if you don't address those people will quickly make the masses feel like they're idiots for following this. And unfortunately, that's when we talk about the culture wars today, that is what's happened. You've had a lot of really brilliant revolution people make the masses feel like they're stupid for believing in God. I think they're stupid for believing in the traditions of marriage and family. So it's up to me to try to convince those few people that, in fact, their ideas are stupid.
All of that was on your character, and you handled it so well because you understood the complexity in that decision.
See, understood the complexity. I didn't even know that was coming.
Yeah.
Like this is something I wanted to do. It was so well intended, and there's the other child who has a little bit more trouble and has a harder time.
Concern about the individual person.
It's a really complicated story.
Complicated is revolution.
It doesn't seem like it is.
See, it's complicated and doesn't seem like it.
So I think his head inclined to his head was inclined to his right a lot. What do you make of that? Head and eyes, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. His stage left. You're right. Yes, that is all the thinking part.
Yeah.
So
and in this one, he was heavily revolution. So he didn't do as much of the bobblehead in this. So if you watch through, this is what we encourage: is if you're very interested, watch through a lot of different interviews with him, and you'll see more of this, or sometimes he'll be more balancy. But in this one, because of the content, he stayed a lot more in that revolution place. It's more intense. Like he said, it's a complex subject. He had a lot of thoughts and ideas about what was being said. And so his revolution was a lot more heavily in play.
Yeah, and it makes sense that a revolution person covering a revolution person would be the longest segment. But yes, a simple way to think about it. If he was wearing a shirt that said feet, if he's looking to the F of the shirt, it's feeling, and the T of the shirt, it's thinking. So in this case, his head was buried over to the thinking section.
Gotcha.
So next, we're going to go to Carl Reiner. And Audra, would you like to take it away as far as for wealth primary?
Yes, you're going to see wealth. And so we've talked about wealth in that last video quite a bit because we were talking about Donald Trump and we were talking about Tim. you're going to see his chin up quite a bit more, and his eyes are going to be up to the top, moving around. That's one of the first things you're going to notice.
I ended up with 13 shows, and I didn't know it was unusual. I just said I was being pushed by the fact, oh, we got to do it.
See, eye sweeping
show,
over there.
How am I going to write an act? I better have an act. I better have a lot of write an act. I'm doing. Oh, that's unusual.
Actually,
I just said
I'm going to slow this down for people. Just
his chin going up. He's looking forward, and then he's going to keep sweeping up.
Oh,
there.
wow. Yeah.
Corner. The corner there.
How am I going to write an act? I better have a
and even
lot
him talking about, oh, I'm being pushed into this. This is victory. So the continuum of wealth and victory is the continuum you're going to see with him.
And the crazy thing is, in his core, he's scared. He's talking about being scared, but look at how his body's projecting that. And that's how you can tell the difference between a wealth person being scared versus a typical.
Well, and ironically, I am gonna note this. He's approval. We've seen a lot of approval secondaries.
Sure.
Yeah. Right, Casey Affleck approval secondary, Brad Pitt approval secondary. He's approval secondary. And one of the reasons because you can have these strong characters that also have a sensitive side. So you're going to see a lot of celebrities.
So she's saying that Tim has a sensitive side. I'm so sorry to let everybody know.
Yeah, don't tell everyone, man. It's not approval secondary. So I am Carl Reiner's exact, or is this Rob? I get the two Reiners mixed up. Yeah, so I'm his exact profile.
Yeah, exact profile, but we have one of 30 different profiles. We call those base profiles, but between that, there are sub-profiles. Gotcha. So we would actually say that you would be a lot more like an Al Pacino, who's wealth approval, than a Carl Reiner.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But same structure, you're processing and expressing things in a similar way.
Yep.
Help at the beginning, and also to show writers who these people are, because you're not going to say, oh no, we didn't do that. I'd say, well, here, read these. You can see that. I was going to give it to writers really and say, no.
And even see right there, he said, well, here, read these.
Got to do a.
When his eye.
Oh, we got to do a show, and
his eyes go down into
the
left.
I better have a lot.
That's a very, very quick read on him thinking.
A lot of help at the beginning, and also to show writers.
Approval. Help with this.
So right
quick
here.
shift down to the right. Oops. I'm sorry, to the left.
You're not going to say, oh no, we didn't do that.
Right there, thinking. Really quick. So he's not doing it a lot, but when he does it, this is what you're going to want to pick up on.
Say, well, here, read these. You can see that. I was going to give it to writers really and say, now for the next, those days it was 30.
See, visual again.
32 shows or 33 shows. So I knew there are going to be 20 shows I couldn't sit and write.
People are probably going to be looking at my eyes as they watch this, and my computer's here to the right, so you're going to get a false read if you're trying to.
Yeah, well, yeah, and factors will definitely influence. But yeah, that's one of the things that you've done so well. But in general, you want somebody that's more of like an encyclopedia, like you are. You're going to see the guy look up more. It's just going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when I was new on TNT, it's like people would complain. I'm like, dude, I'm doing it right now. When I do recall, I can't not look up. And I started talking to you guys almost, early that fall. And I was like, what do you want from me, people? You want the facts? Because if you want the facts about Fatima or Akash, you have to look up. Ask Carl Reiner or whichever Reiner he is.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things is that the benefit to that is it's like you literally have this Rolodex or this visual information that's up there.
You're like Google
in your
basically.
head.
You're like Google
you have to do it. Yeah, you have to do it to be able to just look at how quickly Carl Reiner's speaking as well. That's also going to be more of a wealth trait is that you just kind of rattle things off and you can just kind of rattle off facts and keep talking about things. And that's the benefit. But if someone's used to more of a respect person that's talking like this and telling their story and they're connecting with the audience, they're expecting someone that is going through that Rolodex of facts to act like a respect person. So obviously we talked to you and you were really, really good at adjusting and making sure you're doing more of that. But it's true, you can't expect someone to never have that aspect when that is the gift that they have.
Yeah, and one last thing. Yeah, one last thing as far as for on Tim's behalf, which we actually wrote 2008 when posts were coming out.
2008.
Oh no, or 18.
18.
Where we developed the system 2008. We reached out 10 years later to Tim. Is Tim is freestyling right now. when he talks, you ask such great questions, made such great points, powerfully. That's a gift.
Yeah.
Somebody else that is going to be a smooth communicator, you'll think, oh, that was a really great presentation. You'll see them in the next audience. It will be the exact same presentation over and over and over again. And oftentimes they will have memorized what somebody like a Tim Gordon has said, and they'll just regurgitate it. So people have to start understanding that people's gifts differ. If we're to play on MBTI book name, but they differ. But in this case, the idea is Tim's going to be taking this encyclopedia, libraries, volumes of information, freestyling them, improving them very quickly, and then you're going to have respect people that are going to memorize these rules and communicate them out. Two and totally different functions. And again, that's one of the reasons why we reached out to it, because when we could profile Tim being able to do this, we said, wow, he's a rare talent, and we'd like to talk to him.
Thanks. But back to Audra's point about, I mean, you guys aren't spelling it out. People probably don't know. You think Marshall's a clear respect guy. So his audience, when I was new to him, they're like, why is this guy looking up? What's on his ceiling so much? It's like, you're used to Marshall, who's respect looking exactly level. And I'm like, well, he brought me on, and presumably people liked TNT because of the combo, you know, and so it's like, I have to look up people, you know. Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, Taylor Marshall does a great job of taking information that he's said and expressed it out.
Yeah,
and
doing what he does. Ajay quad Ajay. Yes. Yeah, but I got to do what I got to do. He got to do what he got to do, and so it ended up being a good combination or popular, or whatever. But it was getting irritating because people are like, I like this new guy, but can he quit looking up? It's like, you know, and I was also new to hearing the stupid comments in the com box. I have people that read those for me now, but it's like it can be hard not to take that stuff personally. I'm an approval secondary, so you know.
Exactly. Guys, it hurt. Yeah, and again, you know, having the chance to have hung out with Tim, he is true blue. He is one of the best fathers I've seen to his kids, one of the best husbands I've seen to his wife. Very genuine, very heartfelt, and I would actually love to see more of that come through, because I don't think you guys always see that part to him. But I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and even the opportunity that you've given us right now means the world to us. So we definitely want people to appreciate the strengths that you bring to the Catholic world, which is in a dire need for leaders like you right now. So
there's a Tim plug.
Yeah,
thanks. And well, your system seems to work, as far as I've never seen it not work. I've never heard you go through a profile of you profiled Dave before you'd ever met Dave. I'm like, that's my brother. You profiled Steph before. So I mean, I don't know. People are it's not an infomercial. It's just a lot of information, and you guys have these things out, and I guess it's infomercial like that. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure it is not a neutral presentation we're doing of Nakane Caps. It's pretty impressive to everyone that's seen it. That includes Father Mitch and myself. And I think everyone deserves to be their own judge, which is why we're pushing this thing out. Be your own judge. If you don't like it, don't do it. But everyone I've seen is pretty interested in it. I've had, like I said, tons of emails asking for it. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And if it is an infomercial, we would just promise everything in sliced bread and put a big price tag on it, not give away all the information for free like we are right now. So people can clearly see. That's my revolution defensiveness.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, a magician doesn't reveal his tricks. You guys are literally like, I mean, okay. Yeah, so that's enough of that. But you guys are the magician revealing your tricks right here, right now on Rules and Retrogrades. Yeah.
Because we want people's lives to be transformed right now. We don't want to be the magicians that get hired for large fees to go around and do this.
Right.
Well, we like that too, but if you guys want to.
We recast everybody. You don't want to fail again and say, you did it again. You made it.
Okay. You don't want to fail again. And his arm does a rightward movement. So when people do that, like kind of yes, or any of that kind of movement right there.
Anything like this, and talking about failure or success or doing it, that's all victory. So it's showing that wealth flipping to victory.
Same mistake. So say it again and say, you did it again. You made the same mistake. So Sheldon,
Mistakes.
who
Again,
is
success,
really,
failure, victory.
I love Sheldon. He's my pedant.
So he's talking about love. He's trying to control his emotion right now. So he's itching the back of his neck.
Showing some of that approval secondary.
Still some of that approval secondary, but he's still, see how his head is not where Matt Damon was by any stretch of the imagination.
He's my pedant. He's really, I love Sheldon.
I love Sheldon. So he's getting kind of, just like Matt Damon would go to balance, he's going to wealth to try to get out of that approval, kind of spinning your mud in your thoughts and feelings.
So Sheldon, who is really, I love Sheldon. He's a pedant. He's a guy who told me I was going to be a producer. And I says, I'm going to produce the show. How do you do that? He says, well, I can tell from your writing that you're a producer. I says, how can you tell that? He says, well, you said everything that has to be done, where they're thinking, where they're walking, where they're looking. He says, that's producing.
So again, also important to see when people tend to feel too much emotion, it's not going to be seen in a respect, in a positive, strength. They want to get out of it as soon as possible. It's going to be one of the challenges you're going to have in trying to make transformations in people's lives is they begin to start going to this approval. They start questioning things. They start going to place of meaning, and they want to pop right back out to it. Let's just, let's just hit the reset button. Let's just go out and do whatever. And it's only when people hit rock bottom that they can't get out of that place that oftentimes they're open for these transformations.
Right.
Hello. I was all very well where they're going to walk to out of the room. That's anyway. So I
There's a quick rule.
Walk to out of the room. That's
boom, auditory rule.
Anyway, so I to Sheldon because I'm an actor. I impersonated Sheldon.
And imagine also trying to have a computer program calculate all this information. This is one of the kind of whole rise of AI. This is the Catholicism strikes back, because the ability for a person to take all this information and constantly have a running database, not only of what's happening right now, but also in context to what's happened before, to be able to see.
And from a demeanor standpoint, that's something a computer can never do. A computer can see, okay, their eyes are moving here, or they're doing these gestures, but they're never going to have that overall demeanor that's going to be able to pick up on the nuances and see, is someone trying to control emotion in this situation? Are they uptight? Are they really relaxed? That's something that only human beings can do.
Right.
So that's specifically, that's very specifically the thing that in the mid 90s, when I was a kid, held up AI. Everyone said AI's coming out, it's going to take over everything. It held it up 20 years because these mainframe supercomputers, they could do the computations at 1 million times faster than the human brain could, but they pattern recognition. And that's still how, if you forget your Google password, how do you break in? It's like, which one of these is a fire hydrant? The bots can't figure it out. They can't do pattern recognition. It's unique to the human intellective part of the soul. It's beautiful, which is what your system's showing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we're asking people, please spread the word. Share this information, because this is not a small deal. The most rich and powerful people these days want to take big data to spy on you with everything, to control you in whatever ways they possibly can, and then replace you, to say that nature is more important and that robots in the future will be more important than you. So we're showing something to absolutely say the sanctity, the dignity.
The body soul composite. These are so much more important than what anyone else is trying to sell.
Absolutely.
Except I didn't use the way he talks. I talk like I talk. But
see, some approval
right there. Really,
and he went straight back up to wealth.
Like I talk. But really, Sheldon made me producer.
Okay, so just in summary, you give a quick summary about.
Yeah, so just wealth, again, we've talked about it in the other video, going to be a lot more bottom line, is going to be going through the facts, a lot more visual, their chin will be up. They're going to be, tend to be just a lot more blunt. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes it comes across as being too blunt, but that's the gifts and the challenges that's going to come along with a wealth primary. But obviously wealth is necessary for leadership. It's necessary to have somebody that is comfortable being in a position of power, and if coming from a holy place is exactly what we need in the society.
Yeah. And
question,
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask, why did you say when he says, "Oh, I talk the way I talk," you said his head went into approval? Why is that? Just because he wants people to approve of it, or?
Well, not only that, he could get kind of nervous because in that situation, he's going from a general interview to doing a comedy shtick.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see, for instance, if Brad Pitt was acting, he would not have had the problems of the interview. It's when you're mixing personal and memorized play characters. So in this situation, it's personal. Then he goes back to the play character. There's kind of an incongruity there. And that's when he gets kind of like, I don't feel comfortable. Let me go back.
And sometimes, and this is where, again, you don't know exactly. We're not mind readers. Nobody's meant to be a mind reader. This is not something that you're going, oh, I know exactly what's happening. Right. All you can say is he went down to approval. Is it because he got more emotional? Is it because maybe that character is more of an approval character? So he's going into that character. Right. We don't know exactly what it is. We just know, okay, there's a shift that happened there. This is what that shift is. Now he's shifting back up.
Yes. And we use sports as an example. Like, for instance, you're never going to get a manual of how to be a head football coach to say this will always work, because the defense will always adjust and vice versa. In this case, what we're saying is we can teach you the fundamentals of it and the science behind it, but you're going to have to play the game. You're going to have to play the game. You're going to have to play the game of life in the situation. We're just giving you the tools, but you're going to have to use it. And that's the exciting part too, because we're also not a personality system that's then going to say, here's this big dictionary of who you are and what you should do, which will always work for you. Right. You're taking their patterns, conditions, blood sugar level.
It's like being open to the Holy Spirit. You're taking a tool that God gives you and saying, God, help me use this. Yeah. How it's appropriate. Absolutely. And that's the thing about it that is so great. We're not giving you these memorized tips and having you trust us. We're saying take these tools that God's giving you, pray for the Holy Spirit's guidance, and then use them to make your life and other people's lives better and to have a closer relationship with God. So
use your own prudence. Determinative systems, determinism systems will just say, oh, don't use your own prudence. Just stick to the script, stick to the system, and everything will be okay. This literally, I mean, philosophically, as I'm going through and studying, in doctoral studies, this corresponds with that in a way that's unique from what I've seen. I don't know a ton about the personality test, but it's like I said in the first show, there's no uber compatibility between two profiles of people in a couple. There's challenges that will probably typify this type of couple if it's this primary with this primary, but it's always workable. Like I said, what do you do in MBTI if you happen to take this test as a fun Saturday night date with your wife of 25 years and you're like, oh, we're the least compatible, I guess. We've been having a nice date, but goodbye. Should we divorce? Like, obviously not.
So when I was 18, this is when I was in that sort of in-between place of I had been baptized Protestant. I was actually raised Mormon, baptized Protestant, no good Christian formation. I was on my way out of Christianity toward atheism. And this guy had asked me out and, we seemed to get along. And he called me up several days before the date and said, I looked up our astrological profile and I'm canceling our date. And that was it.
Science.
One of the oddest things. Yeah. But people are doing that. I've heard people say that. We have married couples have said, oh, I looked into this personality profile and we just don't get along. I just don't think there's a way this marriage is going to work. And, we're talking about divorce. And so they're taking any problems that they already have in their marriage and then chalking it up to you're this type, I'm this type. We're just not compatible, which is really insane.
Yeah. And I think this is all so important because, for instance, there's a group, I believe at University of Washington, that looks to profile whether or not a couple or married couple will eventually get divorced or not. And they'll use all these indicators. So it would seem like it would be similar to our system. But what we say is the difference between God versus everybody else is God can transform and resurrect, for lack of a better word, a dead marriage. In this situation, they're only identifying the marriage is dead. And that's the transformative power of how do you take people that were at rock bottom, that were, every possible bad thing happened to them or they did to their marriage, and transform it. That's what we're going to share. But ours is the science, but there's also that other part that is the grace of God. And that's the most important part.
Yep. Without a doubt.
Right. I walked after Sheldon because I'm a good actor. I impersonated Sheldon, except I didn't use his he talks. I talk like I talk. But really, Sheldon made me the producer.
Again, this is the end. Okay, we're going to Scott Kahn now, who is going to be a victory primary. So the other side of the continuum of wealth. And what we're going to see at the very beginning is actually, you're going to immediately see his wealth going to victory. So he's going to start with the other end of his continuum and then shift over to a victory.
Which head position is victory?
Leaning over to the right. Then it's going to be a stronger right. Like balance is going to be a little bit softer. Victory is going to have a little more strength to it.
Yeah, I think if you picture, is it the Call of Duty Modern Warfare poster where you got this guy kind of like.
Yeah, you'll tend to see like Vin Diesel. Or, and it doesn't mean that everyone that's a victory primary is going to be a tough guy victory. There are different types of victory. A lot of them can be, smaller business people or somebody that's, athletic or someone that's just really ambitious and driven. So there's all these different types, but you're going to see that same structural tendency happening.
Say, when you tell them, Dad, I want to be a rapper.
So there's his wealth going down to victory.
So this is a super short clip. I'm going to play it back, but I'm going to play it slow. Oops. And the reason why is because...
Dad, I'm telling him, Dad, I want to be a rapper.
Dad, I want to be a rapper. Up to victory.
Heads leaning over to the right. So it started at wealth. It's going over to victory. Because wealth wouldn't have its head leaning over to the right. Head would be straight up. Okay. Visual. Goes down to
and then
feeling.
Down to the right.
Okay, so Baker Mayfield, for instance, primary victory. Tons of times in his interviews, his eyes will keep going this way, and you can tell somebody's processing whether or not they're made progress or not in a situation, especially primaries. Now you see that little thing. He's trying to keep to the feeling, but his eyes quickly darted over to the thinking place.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
There. Confused. He was confused.
He was confused. Yeah.
Here, I'm going to throw that really quick dart, and I'm going to stop it right there. See, right? Did you see that real quick?
Really quick.
Yeah, it's super.
He's showing a little bit of approval.
He said, I don't understand. There's no instruments.
See, I don't understand.
His father's disapproving, so there's some approval stuff
I don't get it. And I called him. I said, Dad, I got a record deal. He said, I love it. It's fantastic.
Okay, now.
Again, you're saying victory.
Exactly.
It's
right
fantastic.
Yep.
It's great. I love it.
So he's very supportive.
So you can see that shift went from victory to approval and then respect.
And he's probably approval secondary as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I called him. I said, Dad, I got a record deal. He said, I love it. It's fantastic.
His level, right? He's feeling like, oh, I won. This is great.
Very victory.
So he's very supportive.
Very supportive. Went back to approval.
He believes you're going to be the best at something, then he doesn't care what it is, as long as you're the best at it. That's why.
See, head went back over to
right.
victory because he wants to gain his composure. He shared more intimate details of his relationship with his father. Now he wants to reestablish. He's going back to victory and, ironically, eventually back up to wealth.
I stopped. If it's something, then he doesn't care what it is, as long as you're the best at it. That's why I stopped, because I realized I wasn't the best.
Okay, now he went
I stopped. I really wasn't
total
the best.
wealth. Like bottom line, if you want blunt answers for things, oftentimes it'll be wealth primaries that will give it.
Right.
Look, I was best. Look, I wasn't very good.
And that is the victory thing. Is really you're talking about progress. You're talking about the best versus the worst, failure versus success, ambition, goals, team, loyalty. All of those things are in that victory family. So if they feel like, you know what, I'm not going to be the best in this situation, I'm going to go find something where I'm going to be the best, where I'm going to make the most progress,
where I can at least compete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he had great success playing characters that are kind of like that tough guy that can be kind of sensitive. Right. So he found his niche that went along with his profile. And that's an interesting thing that I want to address as far as acting is a lot of times people say, well, I can play anyone. And we know that casting directors, they need to find someone who's in the range of what you can see as believably playing a character, meaning they can go a little bit outside their zone, but they're not going to do something that's so completely different that you would never be able to see that character believably.
Steve Carell is a tough guy. Yeah, it's not going to happen. You know,
Exactly.
I don't care if you were a better actor. He's not going to be a tough guy.
Yeah.
Even if he could play, you know?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
He could play maybe like a, sinister guy, right? Yeah. But he's not going to play a beefcake.
He could play like Kaiser Sose and the
Usual Suspects. And so you can go outside of, he doesn't always have to play an awkward guy. He could, I think, believably play someone who's sinister and dark and, from that place have some strength, but he's never going to play the same characters that a Scott would play.
Right.
And that's because casting directors are really good at picking up on this from a gut feeling. They're amazing. And when they feels like they could play it well.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, in summary, as far as for victory, military, sports, sales, a lot more of this competitive visceralness to it.
Ambition, or even things like doctors. It's anything that really has the blood and guts where they can accomplish something and keep their composure and, feel like they have that success in society.
Yeah. So in summary, if we're to go through these 6 Ocean's 11 actors and the actual parts they played in the movie, and we'll start with Respect primary George Clooney. He was the Respect suave guy.
Confident.
You had Matt Damon, who was the talented but
awkward,
looking down a lot. But still, what does he do? What is a typical approval thing to do is to remember to bring the batteries because that fear. Right. Or,
what if this happens? Or what if this happens? Or what if this happens? It's a strength and a weakness.
Exactly. You have the balance, Brad Pitt.
Who's constantly eating. This is another balance trait.
He's always eating in every one of his movies. That's like a meme, I think. Yeah, he's always eating. Yeah, absolutely. Always eating an apple.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is balance is actually tied to, if we go back to the senses, respect is tied to sound going out.
Communication.
Communication. Approval is tied to touch, love. So again.
So physical touch or emotional
You don't see
touching.
somebody that you love, you hug them. You want to touch them. Zoom is great, Skype is great, but it's better. Yeah. Balance is tied to taste. And like mixed between salty and sweet and texture. And he plays the cool guy. That's what his job is in Ocean's 11.
I'm cool. I'm not gonna
I'm hanging out with the celebrities, teaching them poker. Right. That's his thing. Then Revolution, Casey, he was the nerd. He was the guy that built the mini monster to show how invention could beat the uber masculine Scott Hahn, who was the victory guy.
Scott Hahn.
Scott Hahn, that's funny. You can tell I'm Catholic if I say Scott Hahn before Scott.
Scott Hahn was cut. He actually auditioned for the role Scott Hahn got, but it didn't work out so well.
They said he was too good.
If we made a Catholic of 11 and we took care of it, that would be so great.
We'd actually profile.
But and also you'll notice with Casey Affleck in the film, he does a lot of protestation. So he's the one that's like causing all the problems, and that's how he's distracting because he's saying this is happening, and he's being very revolutionary and protesting a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And
was that the Ella Fitzgerald or the I forgot all the different names. The con.
So then we have Carl Reiner again he plays the wealthy character. That's his position, right? Is to play that wealthy character. He's wealth primary.
Yeah, but and
not a very cool wealth guy. I gotta say, as a wealth guy, you're always like, Pacino. I'm like, I'll roll with that. But yeah, Reiner's not. He's one of the least cool wealth movie, and you got kind of cool guys to play a lot of different roles. I wish Reiner weren't that role in that one, and he's also kind of a lesser character.
If it makes you feel any better, Elliot Gould also played a wealth primary guy, and he was pretty cool.
He was a eccentric, different kind of eccentric wealth.
Yeah, it's like, hey, Damon, how you doing?
Yeah,
get in the room, get in the house. And so so
it doesn't make me feel any better, but whatever.
Sorry, you don't have a wardrobe of robes all around.
Velvet fog.
And then Scott Conn obviously played that typical victory guy, just in the monster truck, and he's the tough guy, and so
he's constantly doing this like, are you ready yet?
Yeah, so they actually played their primaries in real life, actually very typically played the same type of characters, just usually exaggerations. So you'll see that sometimes they'll tend to be quieter in real life, but they play an exaggeration of themselves on film.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the interesting thing as far as with Carl Reiner, him being approval secondary, what do they have? Fearful.
He's
has
more
to take
of a,
heart medication.
They played on the fear more so in that film, I think, than he even is. It was just an exaggeration of his approval, I think, quite a bit more.
Right. And so he's in approval. Like, how are we going to do all this? And I'm not sure. Yeah. And then eventually they're like, is this really the right guy? And then they talk to him demeaning, and he goes to Wealth, if you ever talk to me again like that.
Yeah.
Goes back to Wealth. Okay, he's ready.
But it's fun. I mean, it's fun to have this information and then go back to the film and
watch the movie
film.
Because we can't fake this. Go back to other interviews.
I'll throw a spitball at you. What if we go through? You were talking about Brothers Karamazov. It would be great to go through those guys. But what if we go through the Godfather brothers? Since you have me thinking of Pacino, you got Sonny Santino is obviously Victory, who's just the tough guy. You got Fredo.
I hate it. I have to go back and watch it.
If we look at the like deer in headlights,
I'm like, oh crap, I don't know the Godfather.
We could have a
this is rather embarrassing.
Binge watching session of the Godfather.
Yeah,
and then part one.
Do a bonus video. We would totally be up for that. That's actually one of the things that we want to do is just go through pop culture of people you're familiar with. So we will definitely have the Godfather segment coming soon.
I think I know what everyone would be. Vito would be Respect. You'd have Michael being Wealth. You'd have Fredo being either Revolution or maybe Approval. You'd have I forget the sister's name. I don't know what she'd be, but you'd definitely have Santino being the Victory guy. And I'd be interested if you actually analyze the head and the eyes.
If the Respect guy I think was Joe Pesci, I think you're absolutely right. And I totally get what you're saying. So probably the Victory guy is more the muscle guy. The other guy.
We'll watch it. We'll watch it. We'll do some more upcoming episodes.
Yeah. I bet you're probably 80 to 90% right on that. Sounds good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Because Tim is already he's already done such a good job of. She's the more cautious one. I'm putting my chips on you, Tim. You're.
So I wanted to show everyone that does sign up, and we're going to go ahead and send out newsletters this week, and we're going to send out some free worksheets. We have these cards here that are cheat sheets. They show the continuums. It has quick descriptions. This is all on a PDF along with some worksheets to take notes. We'll be sending that out this week. Hundreds of people that have
already
responded.
Signed up. Amazing comments. We truly take it as an honor of all the things that you guys have shared with us, and we have dedicated over a decade right now to develop this, to make sure it was right, to make sure it's implemented right. That's why we couldn't leave the Catholicism out of the equation, because clearly where you're coming from is as important as any science.
Absolutely.
Or more important. So, but we're going to do our best to do that. We're going to start up YouTube channels for general audience.
Seminars. We have all kinds of amazing things coming up. And we are just so thankful to Tim for giving us this opportunity. And we just think the world of Tim and his family.
Yeah,
and,
we've had a few
Patreons
sign up. We really appreciate that, guys. We financed this ourselves for, again, over a decade, gone through a lot of struggles with it. And
we didn't want to go to the non-God related route. And so that meant that we couldn't go the route of grants and whatnot. We self-financed. We used all our savings.
Yeah,
secular, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
even Paul Ekman from Lie to Me said he could not do the research that he did. And he's an atheist, I believe. He still couldn't do the research because he said it's too experimental for these days.
And it took 40 years for people to accept that facial expressions in the scientific community. It took 40 years for them to decide that there was validity to the fact that facial expressions were universal.
Yeah. So for anybody that's maybe skeptical, we say, do you really want to wait 40 years of your life for possibly this to get in a textbook, to then somebody learn about it and then teach you about it 10 and 20 years later? If you want to give away 40, 60 years of your life, great. Otherwise, we say try it.
Yeah, check it out. That's the thing. Where can they reach you? Again, I have all your info, but what's the best place to go check out Nakane Caps?
Is to go to our website, nakanecaps.com. That's Nakane Caps, CAPS.com. You can sign up through there. I get all the emails, and we're compiling the list, and we're sending information out in the next couple days.
Yeah, and that's one of the best ways. We're going to clearly have YouTube channels as well, but the challenge is with algorithms and whatnot. And like you'd said before, with shadow banning, you never know what's going to happen. So the more
this will go directly to your email, and you'll find out about everything that's coming out that's new. So
cool.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I'm excited for people to watch this video even more than the first one, because they can see the 6 embodied motivants in real guys, and I think this should be good. I'm excited, and thank you guys for coming on. 2 episodes. People are really excited about this. Contact Brennan and Audra if you have further questions. Thank you guys very much.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks again, Tim.
God bless you.
God bless.
Peace.